this video, we'll be talking about some of the fundamental units of measurement that we use within our measurement systems. We've been using units of measurement for thousands of years, literally. Now, measurement systems take many different forms, from basic ones where, for example, for thousands of years, people have measured distances as things like cubits and palms, where your palm is basically the distance from here to here, cubits the distance from the top of your finger to your elbow. Now, as simple as those systems are, and most of us do have palms and most of us do have elbows and wrists and fingers and things like that, a lot of those things for different people will vary in size. And over time and over different populations, those have varied in size as well. So you see, for example, there's a Hebrew measurement, an Egyptian measurement, a common measurement, a Babylonian measurement, which have come into prominence at different times and different places around the world. Now, obviously, you can't just say, well, it needs to be this long, cut it this long, and one guy's got a short arm, one guy's got a long arm. And so you had measurement sticks, for example. You see one here. This is an Egyptian one that was used to try and solidify what these distances actually are, or what was the agreed upon understanding of what they actually are, otherwise known as the standard. Now, it's not just distance. Measurement in ancient world has been going on for a long time in things like weight, for example. Here's some quotes from the Hebrew books of the law. And for example, the first one, you'll have in your bag no inaccurate weights, a heavy weight and a light weight. The basic premise is that some people, if they wanted to rip someone off, if they were selling something, they might use their heavy weight. So the person thinks they've bought more than what they actually have, or they've paid more than what they should have. But if they're buying something, then they might use their light weight. And so it was a way of ripping people off. And so for thousands of years, there's been these measurement standards of, well, here's the accurate weight. Likewise, you'll have just and accurate balances and weights, a just ephah and a just hin. And for those that didn't know, I had to look it up. The ephah is a dry measurement for measuring things like spices and flours and things like that. And that's approximately equal to about 33 litres. The hin liquid measurement, that's approximately equivalent to 3.67 litres. So we've got these different measurements. We don't typically use these ones today, but our measurements have changed over time. Now, what we do use these days is our SI measurements. Now, you've probably heard of measurements in the imperial system, yards, inches, feet, those sort of things. And in many areas across the US, these are still used, mostly because people wanted to hold on to them and wouldn't let them go. They account for some cumbersome multiplication factors. For example, if you want to work out how many feet you've got, well, you divide your number of inches by 12 because you've got 12 inches per foot. When we're designing printed circuit boards, and I design a lot of printed circuit boards, for some reason, a lot of them still use mils or millionths of an inch as a standard measure that's often used in measuring distance between things in the circuit board. What we use these days mostly, and especially in Australia, is the metric system, where we've got, for example, meters, centimeters, millimeters, where we divide things by multiples of 10. It makes it very easy for us to convert between different measurements. Now, the SI units, which these metric units fall into, and there's lots and lots of them, we'll be talking about them, also known as the system internalis, the units, was basically a treaty that's pretty old, 1875, the International Treaty of the Meter. Now, you might think that's a joke because meters are a measurement term, but this was signed in Paris, 20th of May, 1875. And this is where a whole bunch of countries, including the US, I should say, signed up to say, yes, we're going to use SI units, these agreed upon units, but not all of them have. And so this has led to some issues over time. For example, in 1999, NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter crash, they were basically trying to calculate forces of their thruster, but they were calculating them using imperial measurements rather than metric measurements. And it caused a crash and a waste of millions of dollars. So we should be using SI measurements, and let's go through the fundamental units of measurement that we'll be using. We have our fundamental units, and then we have derived units from each of those. And so you see our fundamental units here of meters and kilograms and seconds and amps and Kelvin for our degrees, candela and mole when we're talking about matter. We have some supplementary ones where we're talking about angles, so we're looking at radians. And then we have a bunch of derived units from each of these. And so you can see them in terms of area and volume, acceleration, and you'll see those basic units that we had before coupled with other units or coupled with extra dimensions of those other units. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to use all of these units in this class. There's way too many of them. There's way too many sensors to carry. But this gives you an idea of the different measurement units that we have that we could potentially deal with and that we can potentially quantify things with.